Hi, I'm Hauran.
Hi, I'm Haixu.
We will be debating whether technological innovation will have a net positive impact on white-collar workers in the global north in the future. I think technological innovation is good for future white-collar workers. A lot of people assume a simple story. Machines replace humans, jobs disappear, and inequality rises. But historically, that is not really how it works. Studies found that technology tends to replace tasks, not entire jobs. Research by David Alter shows that computerization mainly automates routine tasks, while actually increasing demand for non-routine work. I think it's the same with AI. So instead of eliminating jobs, technology often removes the boring parts and shifts us towards what makes us human, like emotional intelligence and leadership.
Okay, I get your point, but I don't think it's that simple. Even if technology replaces tasks instead of the whole jobs, those tasks still make up a big part of people's work. When enough tasks are removed, the job itself can disappear. Also, not everyone can easily move into those non-routine roles you mentioned. Research by Peter shows many workers don't have the skills or training needed for those jobs. And even with training, it can take years for people to transition into new roles, during which they may face unemployment or lower income. So in reality, the shift is often slow and uneven. So while technology might create new opportunities, it can also push some of the workers out of the labor market instead of helping them transition smoothly.
Right. I think we might be underestimating the flexibility of our white-collar workers. I think with technology in hand, workers might be able to transition more quickly than we expect, especially when we focus on the skills that are uniquely human. Remember, these soft skills are highly transferable. I think part of the problem is also how we perceive change in the job market. Job losses are usually very fast and highly visible. For example, when a factory closes, the job losses are immediate and concentrated. However, job creation is typically slower and more dispersed across industries, so we don't notice it as easily. That makes technological change seems more negative than it actually is.
Well, I don't think this is just about perception. Even if new jobs are eventually created, they are not always accessible or equivalent in quantity. Many jobs require higher levels of skills or experience, which makes it difficult for some displaced white-collar workers to transition into them. As a result, they may face uncertainty or instability during the process. So the issue is not just how the change is perceived, but whether workers can realistically benefit from these opportunities.
I agree that some jobs will be disrupted, but I think we need to consider the quality of work, not just job security. From a psychological perspective, people don't just want stable jobs, they want meaningful ones. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once basic needs are met, people look for fulfillment and purpose. Routine work rarely provides that. So, if technology removes these tasks, it can improve job satisfaction by letting people focus on more meaningful contribution.
But I don't think automation will necessarily increase job satisfaction because workers usually need stable income and job security before they can pursue higher level needs, such as recognition or self-fulfillment. For example, research from the University of Oxford estimates around 47% of jobs in the USA are at high risk of automation within the next 10 to 20 years, suggesting that technological innovation could potentially displace a large number of existing jobs. If technological change creates uncertainty about employment, workers may feel anxious about losing their jobs rather than focusing on meaningful work. Also, two-factor theory told us that basic factors like job security must be satisfied before motivation can improve. Therefore, automation doesn't automatically lead to better satisfaction.
I think that workers can feel stressed about losing their jobs, but I think workers must focus on reality. Even if 47% of jobs might be vulnerable to being automated, there is no guarantee whatsoever that they will or actually be automated. We have to consider the financial viability of automation. More realistic studies suggest that only about 9% of jobs are actually at risk of automation, and less than 5% can be fully automated with our current technology.
I know, but focusing only on full automation can be very misleading. Even if only 5% of jobs are fully automated, many more will still be affected. For example, the OECD research shows that around 32% of jobs will undergo significant changes due to automation. That means workers still need to adapt to new tasks, right? So the real issue is not full job loss, but widespread disruption across the labor market.
I agree that adaptation is challenging for many people, but avoiding technology isn't the solution either. The world is constantly changing, and we will need to adapt whether there is technology or not. In fact, companies that don't adopt technology often become uncompetitive and shut down, which destroys all jobs for everybody, not just some. Regardless of the era in which we are in, there will always be disruption.
Well, you should know avoiding new technologies is not the key. The key is to manage their impact. Rapid adoption can still lead to large-scale layoffs before new jobs are created, leaving many workers behind. Not all displaced workers can easily reskill. Also, while safety improves in some areas, new risks such as technology failures or stress can emerge, so the overall benefits are not guaranteed. Also, research by McKinsey found even white-collar workers don't have equal access to training. Opportunities often depend on factors like company resources, job level, and time availability. This means learning new skills is not equally achievable for everyone, so simply encouraging workers to adapt may underestimate the scale of the challenge.
Right. I agree that access to training is a real concern, but that is precisely why technology is important. For example, online learning has already made education much more accessible for so many people, especially for those that are in remote areas. And AI, artificial intelligence, could make learning even more personalized and scalable. So technology doesn't just create disruption, it also creates tools for people to adapt.
I see your point, but I don't think technology alone can address this issue. Expanding access to online learning doesn't necessarily translate into effective participation. Many workers still face constraints such as limited time, insufficient digital skills, and a lack of organizational support. So while technology may provide learning tools, it doesn't guarantee workers can fully utilize them or successfully adapt to changing job demands.
I think there is no guarantee in the world that we will become successful because ultimately our achievements depend on how much effort we put into them. In this case, I think more people will benefit from the training and education offered through technology, so it should be a net positive initiative for everybody. Another point people don't often talk about is that not all jobs are actually meaningful. Anthropologist David Graeber describes something called BS jobs, roles that even workers themselves feel are pointless. This is often due to over-regulation by the government and middle management being incentivized to build empires. If technology helps eliminate these BS jobs, that is actually a net gain for society.
No, I don't fully agree. So-called BS jobs can simply be removed without any consequences. Even if some roles seem low value, they still provide a stable income for many white-collar workers. For example, administrative and coordination roles in large organizations often appear routine but are essential for operations. Evidence from the OECD shows many displaced workers move into lower paid or unstable jobs, which indicates removing these roles doesn't necessarily improve job quality.
Right. For some of these workers in BS roles who ended up moving into lower paid jobs, that is an individual responsibility. For society, I think it will still be a net gain for everybody else because the workforce has become more productive in general. So employers have no obligation to provide a stable income to workers who are not actually productive and working in BS jobs. So historically, technological innovation has always created new industries and opportunities. And when productivity increases, costs go down, demand rises, and firms expand, which creates more jobs overall for everyone else.
No, I don't think historical patterns can be applied so directly here. The current pace of technological change is much faster, and the adjustment period is far more difficult for workers. Even if more jobs are created overall, that doesn't mean displaced workers can access them. According to skill-based technological change theory, innovation tends to favor high-skilled workers while putting others at a disadvantage. So focusing on long-term job increase may overlook the current and uneven impact on workers today.
I agree that technology alone cannot solve every problem in the labor market, but it is important to recognize that inequality isn't caused by technology itself. According to the OECD, inequality outcomes are shaped by policy, education, and institutions. Technology is just a tool. And even with AI, humans are still essential to design systems, make decisions, and ensure ethical outcomes for our organization and our society. Humans are the supervisors and the architects of technological systems. So I think the future of work isn't humans versus machines. I think it's a partnership. So the real question is not whether technology changes work, because it always has. The real question is whether we choose to adapt and harness innovation or let fear of disruption hold us back.